Sonic Prime's trailer was released by Netflix for the viewing of many people and Sonic fans alike, and it was met with varying reactions. So, in this video, I'll break down my personal thoughts on what was revealed, and as a bonus, I'll also give you all some of my theories or story predictions on how I think the series will possibly be like with some artwork, so to give you all a somewhat visual interpretation on my vision for the show. So just work with me here if any of you can. Okay, so the trailer itself was mostly 14 seconds of Sonic just running around in Green Hill, a location that has never been overused from this franchise. Then ending with Sonic talking.
I know what you're thinking. I'm good and powerful, apparently.
With a new voice. Guess I'll talk about that now. Yeah, so if anyone has watched my previous video on Sonic Prime, I've mentioned the talk about the show for this franchise getting new voice actors, specifically from Canada. That's right, for the first time ever for this series, kind of, we got our nice friends from the Upper North who are going to be voicing these beloved, personality disordered, and sometimes confused version of the characters well known. The person we know and has been stated to be voicing Sonic in this web/TV series will be Devin Mack, who, from listening to a bit of his portrayal of the Blue Blur, I could say sounds really nice and I love it. Granted, there's not that much to go off his voice acting, but from what I've heard from researching more of his roles, he voiced Chuck from the Angry Birds Netflix series, Summer Madness, which I remember watching a couple of months back, who, just like Sonic, was also shown to be a fast, quick-like character.
You had me at cake. We are making cake, right? I stopped paying attention right after I heard the word cake.
And Grossology as the character Lab Rat, who, from deep research, I finally remembered this guy.
Hermes and Timmy get along just fine.
I think he will pull it off as Sonic. He sounds like a mixture of Jaleel White, Ryan Drummond, and Jason Griffith's take on Sonic. Maybe even with a little bit of Ben Schwartz from the movie. I've been constantly hearing from most people that they thought he sounded like Roger Craig Smith, which I didn't hear it. From what I've heard from his YouTube video, he sounds like he has a bit more of a high, kind of scratchy pitch voice of the character, and puts a little bit more energy and enthusiasm in Sonic, kind of reminding me of Ryan's portrayal of the Blue Devil.
Talk about low-budget flights, no food or movies. I'm out of here. I like running better. Hey, guy, take care. Hey, that's my line.
Hey, what's up? It's me, Sonic. Check me out on Netflix's Sonic Prime. I must move at a relatively quick pace. I know what you're thinking. I'm good and powerful, apparently. Jealous?
Unlike Roger, who, look, no offense to the man, he's a great voice actor. I just personally don't think he really pulls it off with a character like Sonic, who, yeah, I'm sort of repeating the same point from my previous video, but I do personally think it kind of stands. His voice range and tone for Sonic sounds more like a 30-something midlife crisis college graduate with a voice that sometimes sounds a little groggy at some points and trying way too hard of wanting to be taken serious or cool, but ends up more embarrassing himself.
Dude, there's the emerald! I'm sorry, I didn't get that memo. I beat you every time. No, seriously, we beat this guy every time. It's like it's our job or something. There's sand everywhere!
Green Hill's looking a lot more like Sand Hill right now.
I know Roger was just doing his job that he was given by Sega, but I still personally think his voice doesn't fit Sonic. And if he was to voice him in this, I don't think he could pull it off with the alleged tone for this show.
Your plan will end like all your plans do, with you sitting in a pile of busted robot parts wondering how you failed so badly.
But that's not to say he wouldn't be a bad choice for this series for another character. I'll get to that later to emphasize my point. Anyways, continuing on with the voice actors who will be voicing in the series, I can't get a strong opinion on them because they aren't credited of which character they will be voicing in the series, but I can talk about some of them since I am kind of familiar with some of the work they did, like Ashley Ball, who is mostly known for voicing characters like Rainbow Dash and Applejack in the My Little Pony franchise, and from doing deep research, I found that she was also the voice of both Mary and Sissy from Johnny Test. Yeah, the Whip Crack Show. Who, by the way, has the same voice as the character Rainbow Dash in MLP.
Johnny, the human personality is based on so many things that nobody really knows for sure. How can you not love a show about a kid whose older twin brothers do experiments on him? Guts! Style! Coolness! Awesomeness! And radicalness!
From what little I've remembered of her work, I think I could see her maybe voicing Tails with her scratchy, kind of girlish/boyish voice. It would probably fit Tails since he did have several female voice actresses portraying him before.
I hate losing. Oh yeah! Best day ever!
Shannon Chan Kent, another voice actress who I'm somewhat familiar with. I mostly remember her voicing Trixie from Slugterra, a show about using slugs as guns that are known as slug slingers. I get it. And that's about it of what I remember her voicing in. As for anything else, I'm not familiar with. However, she has voiced, or in this case, sang for some songs for, once again, My Little Pony for some episodes, which she's actually a pretty good singer.
I'd rather sing. La 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 la. The Karen used to speak and sing. We weren't always quiet.
I could maybe see her voicing Amy for this series, if given the chance.
And you're welcome. You know, this road is filled with guys like that. You should be more careful. Oh, I'm imagining it. Sounds like you're calling yourself an idiot.
And by the way, fun fact, Shannon made an appearance in the first Sonic movie from a couple years back, playing the bartender who you see from both the trailer and movie. Huh. Who would have thought that would lead her a role in this show? Yeah. Kazumi Evans, another female voice actress who I'm not familiar with, but yet again, from some research I did, she is also known for her voicing and singing for MLP too.
Let's have a battle, 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 battle of the fans.
Mostly seem to be well known for voicing a character named Adagio for the MLP spin-off series Equestria Girls, about one of the pony characters going through another world where they're a teenage female version of said character. Yeah, I won't question it, just go with it. From listening to Kazumi's voice for Adagio, I could come to the assumption of seeing her voicing Rouge with her seductive, stern-like voice.
A little cocky though, aren't they? Being stuck here with you two isn't making this world any more bearable.
Or Blaze with a more so stern, serious-like voice.
A monster attack? Blast! I'm performing at the ceremony this afternoon and I still haven't sorted out what to play. How am I meant to practice with a monster invading Ponyville? Something like that might work.
Now, on to the male voice actors. I'm going to put them all together in a row and go through each of them so to make this video not go on for much longer. Two of them I'm kind of familiar with, while the other two, not so much. The first person, and this one was quite a shock, is Brian Drummond, who, if you watched my previous video, I've mentioned he used the voice for the Sonic franchise in Sonic Undergrounds as Classic Knuckles. So I can only assume that considering the premise of this show, we could see that version of Knuckles later. That would be kind of cool. I couldn't imagine any other character Brian could play. Maybe Eggman?
Lucky it didn't kill you. That thing was a piece of junk when it was new. I've never been so insulted in all my life!
Next is Vincent Tong, who I'm also kind of familiar with. I remember him for mostly playing Kai from Lego Ninjago, a series I kind of didn't catch up with after Season 3. Yeah, that long ago. I should start seeing what I've missed out on from that show. I could see him maybe voicing Shadow, or Espio, or both with a stoic, serious-like voice.
Forgive me, Pronto. Today, together, we shall win! Junbei! Hoichi! Thank you for an invigorating duel.
Anyways, next voice actor is Ian Hanlon, who will also be voicing in this show. I'm not so familiar with his work. I mostly known him for playing some of the characters on Mega Man Fully Charged, a show I talked about before on my previous video on Sonic Prime. But I remembered that he voiced the character Red from, once again, Angry Birds Summer Madness.
Just the thought makes me so angry! And when I get angry, I get an idea!
A character I can see Ian playing would be Silver with a kind of nasally, dorky-like voice range, if he will make an appearance on the show.
When I get mad, I get lunch! Well, I guess I get lunch. But after lunch, I get even.
And now the last voice actor, Adam Narada. I couldn't find much voice work he did, so I can only assume he'll voice a possible well-known character like Knuckles or other male Sonic characters. Now, I'll talk about the look of the animation that was shown in the trailer from Wild Brain that some people and fans are kinda mixed on from some of the discourse I've seen. So I thought I could come in and maybe help make some of the naysayers to look at it in a somewhat positive light and to open your heart and it will be alright. Aha, see what I did there? I think it looks interesting. Sonic's model I think looks a little nice. I love the detail of Sonic's gloves and a little bit of his body too. I also love the figure 8 running effect that Wild Brain put in. A nice cool little callback, unlike reusing Green Hill to reference for the umpteenth time. Guess I'll talk about the background look of the show. It does look a little plastic-like, making it seem more like something from Fortnite, along with the rest of the background possibly looking like it was drawn digitally, giving the illusion of something being there. That's also kind of cool. I also think the blurry particle-like effect behind Sonic when he's running is fucking awesome. Cause after all, his nickname is the Blue Blur, so, you know, kind of live up to that title. The effect almost reminds me of the opening cutscene of Sonic Unleashed when Sonic is running around and trashing Eggman's robots. Now, my personal thoughts on the animation, I'm sort of mixed on. It looks extremely squash and stretch, but it also makes Sonic look expressive. The whole animation to me looks like an updated version of the in-game Sonic cutscenes from Sonic Team, but, you know, given a little more effort. Some people stated that the animation is a bit jumpy or snappy, to which I think I could answer why that is, and maybe convince some of you to have a little faith in it. Okay, so we all know that Wild Brain is working on Sonic Prime's animation. The same people that did Mega Man Fully Charged, but I think I could go even deeper as of which specific animation company, or used to be animation company, that will be working on Sonic Prime. I thought about this when looking back at Fully Charged type of animation. Then I came across a specific video from this YouTuber, Shinkin004. Which, check him out, he does videos on every Canadian TV network and animation company. I've watched one of his videos where he talked about this animation studio's history. That said animation studio is Nerd Corps Entertainment. If that name is familiar to some of you, then allow me to explain. Nerd Corps is a Canadian animation studio from Vancouver that made such things like Dragon Booster, Stormhawks, League of Super Evil, Rated A for Awesome, and Slugterra. If you watched any of Nerd Corps' shows, then you would have also been familiar with their animation style, which I think they're well known for, like the constant squash and stretch, the zany expressions, mostly cel-shaded style, and some fluid animation. Now, you might also be wondering as of what happened to Nerd Corps afterwards. Well, I'll have Shinkin004 explain that to you.
As Nerd Corps started getting more series released, tragedy struck the company, as it became defunct in 2016, despite having a successful series with Slugterra on Disney XD. They were bought by DHX Media and merged with Studio B Productions and the Halifax Film Company to become Media DHX, eventually becoming Wild Brain Studios, which have had many series for other companies since then.
So, yeah, Nerd Corps merged with Wild Brain and were some of the same people that given us the Mega Man show. And just like that show, it had some squash and stretch, zany expression, cel-shaded style, and some fluid 3D animation, as I mentioned before. I've heard from some fans that think the animation is a little cheap and doesn't look that great, to which I kind of understand, but I assure you, if any of you can, watch some of Nerd Corps' stuff. They are mostly on YouTube or Tubi. I also heard that they've also did most of the animation on Ninjago 2 in the later seasons, which I've said before I didn't catch up with, but from some clips I've seen from the new seasons, it looks not that bad. So we could be in some great hands as far as animation is concerned. Now, with all that out of the way, I want to talk about my own predictions on how I think the story of the show will go, and as I stated before, just work with me here, cause some of it is going to be me narrating and theorizing with some of my own concept artwork, and others who helped in with the visualization. Okay, so the story will probably start off from what we've seen from that trailer with Sonic running around in Green Hill with Sonic collecting or running through the rings. I guess they wanted to be extremely accurate to the games. Anyways, we might eventually see some familiar characters make an appearance with Sonic, only they're possibly the mainline game characters, or if the name of this series is anything to go by, the Archie comic versions of the Sonic characters, or IDW. And I know that does seem most unlikely, but given the premise of the show, I wouldn't rule anything out just yet, and there's a reason that which I'll later get to. Now, taking some of the info that I remember seeing leaked from IMDb into consideration, and yes, I know that I shouldn't take everything on IMDb at face value, and there's a 60% chance that this could have been made up, but I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt because it does seem to align with everything that the series is about. The info states that
after years of being self-centered, brash, arrogant, and taking his life and closest friends for granted, Sonic the Hedgehog is then back, goes on an adventure unlike any other.
This also seems to especially align more with what Geoff Knightley and Mari Takahashi said about the show on the Netflix Geeked Week 2022 showcase.
Sonic's a pretty big deal these days.
Absolutely. Sonic Prime is the hedgehog you know and love until an incredible twist thrusts Sonic into a new adventure.
The new series features a reinvented cast and Sonic like you've never seen him before, where the fate of the multiverse rests in his gloved hands.
This time, Sonic's adventure isn't just a race to save the universe from Dr. Eggman, it's a race to save, dun dun dun, his friends.
Honestly, I think Sonic's kind of taking his friends for granted, if I have to be honest with you.
I'm assuming the quote friends will be the characters like Amy, Tails, and Knuckles, and from the rest of the info, it sounds like Sonic made some sort of terrible mistake that put them in horrible danger. Most likely in the hands of Robotnik, or Eggman, whichever or, who will probably play a part involving or causing the whole multiverse/dimension ordeal, which again is possibly something he put Sonic's friends in danger, while achieving this, along with Sonic's quote, brash actions, that was the contributing factor. It's here where we'll possibly meet Sonic the Zone Cop, Sonic's alternate self from the No Zone, which tries to maintain order of every version of Sonic's dimension, who will be voiced by Roger Craig Smith. Yeah, I know that won't happen because of the voice acting laws I've heard about being strictly Canadian-based, and Roger isn't Canadian. But again, if you remember watching my previous video on Sonic Prime, I've stated how well-fitting his voice range and tone for Zonik could be, and Zonik's characterization serving as a Batman or Chris Redfield, who are both characters Roger voiced, by the way.
Stay down! I did what I could. Time for a new challenge!
Talk, or you won't be walking anywhere, ever.
And we'll also see those other dimension versions of Eggman, which I'm going to get into these two specific versions that'll play somewhat of a strong role in the series. The first Eggman with the hair almost reminds me of Sonic Movie's Eggman, and while yes, it seems unlikely and doubtful he'll make an appearance in this show, as it was shown at the end of the first movie that he did shave his hair off, but in the sequel movie, which by the way, spoiler alert, he says this when facing off with Movie Sonic.
I'm going to enslave humanity and force them to service my machines.
First Green Hills, then the universe, then the multiverse, then who knows? Maybe I'll be enough.
Multiverse. Again, maybe it is a bit of a stretch that he'll be in it because Paramount owns the movie rights for that franchise, but there's also some other chance that he'll make an appearance in the series. Again, unlikely, but would be kind of cool. Next and lastly is the old version of Eggman, and this one will probably be my most far-fetched prediction in my story theory thing. But what if that's supposed to be Eggman Nega? For some of you not familiar with this character, let me catch you up to speed. Nega is, or was, an alternate dimension version of Eggman who made his appearance in Sonic Rush, until Sega decided to retcon him into being Eggman's descendant from the future in the Sonic Rivals duology. It was there when another new character made her appearance as well, Blaze the Cat, a princess from a place called the Soul Dimension. Now, I should clarify, I never did play any of the Sonic Rush games, but from what I've heard, they are pretty fun and story kind of decent. But again, considering Sonic Prime's premise, we could get a possible retelling of that from the game, or maybe they're going to stick with the Eggman Nega being related to Eggman thing, or maybe try to do both with making the story of the show about dimension and time traveling, possibly introducing Silver the Hedgehog eventually. Again, a cool possibility. And as for Zonik, he will also be a pivotal role in Sonic's adventure. And I might as well address this. I've gotten some comments that I've been getting about Zonik not appearing in the show because he is a character from the Archie comics and will never be in the show because of this guy. For some who don't know who this is Ken Penders, a comic book writer mostly known famously, or infamously, for writing for the Sonic the Hedgehog Archie comic series, which started from 1993, but sadly ended in 2017, which was incredible for a comic book series based on a video game franchise to go on for over 20 years. So, why did it end? Well, mostly because of the lawsuit with Ken Penders. To summarize the whole story, Ken filed a lawsuit against Archie so that he can own the characters that he written for them, including Zonik, for the already existing franchise, and basically gotten away with it because Archie couldn't find their legal agreement papers that Ken signed that he didn't have full rights to those characters, and also because Sega didn't want to possibly go up against him, possibly because they would have to give money to it. All of this went on from 2009 to finally ending in 2016, with Sega ending their partnership license with Archie in 2017 because of Archie's incompetence. This is why some people doubt Zonik, or some of the other Archie characters, will ever appear, and to that I say, I somewhat disagree. Ken only came up with the writing of the story for the character, while Zonik was actually created by Dan Slott, another comic book writer. So while, yeah, I can agree it is still unlikely we will see any of the other Archie or even the IDW Sonic comic characters in this show, I think Sonic will possibly be an exception to the rule. Now that I've gotten all of that out of the way, I can now continue on with my predictions. I believe Sonic will help Sonic travel around each multiverse, or zones again if you read the original Archie comics. This is where we also see those shoes Sonic wears from those concept art by Patrick Horan. I'm guessing to serve as a way to travel to each multiverse, probably with the help of the rings. Oh yeah, the rings! I wonder if they're going to be used in a way to advance the plot, or have a meaning in this show, like the rings are used as a form of currency, maybe used to help enhance Sonic's abilities like the power rings in the Sonic Satam cartoon, or Sonic X, which was basically inspired by that concept from the head honchos at Sega and Sonic Team. Or maybe if they're used as a means for Sonic able to again travel to those multiverses, like something from both classic Genesis games, Sonic 1 and Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Like Sonic is talking to Sonic with the voice of Roger Craig Smith in some sort of headset communication gear like,
Sonic, collect 50 rings and you'll be able to get through the special zone to another dimension.
Got it! You know, like that. This will be where we see those alternate dimension version of Sonic's friends, just as was seen from some of the concept art like Tails and Amy, as well as some others which I did my own concept art on how I would imagine they would look and act like. First, introducing Blaze. I've entirely based my design of Blaze on some of her concept art of how she originally looked. Gave her a sort of cape thing with flames all over it, fitting her fiery nature aesthetic. Mixed that together, giving her Sonic Rider boots design, which I know will probably not be like this. Then was inspired by making her hairstyle from her concept art while combining and basing her characterization on Piper. For those that aren't familiar with this character, I will fill you in. Piper was a character in a show I've mentioned before, Stormhawks. She was the smart tactician that took her job very seriously and knew nearly everything about her world and its history, called Atmos, which I'll talk about later for another character I'll reveal. She also knows a lot about crystals, Atmos' kind of power source. This is where I would want the Soul Emeralds to come into play for Blaze and her knowledge on them. This is also why I've entirely based my interpretation of Blaze on Piper and would love to see these kinds of concepts in the show. Next is Knuckles. I've based his design with a mixture of my idea with this concept art of showing Sonic in what I'm guessing is chemical plant to these 3 shattered dimensions he'll travel to. One of which shows this image of a supposed pirate flag that has an initial on it that looks like Knuckles, his tribe's design from Sonic Adventure, and a little bit of this character design from Nibroc-Rock of a character from the Sonic Chronicles game. Oh, and as a bonus, I've given him a ring headband for his dreadlocks, along with these green and white bands based on his Christmas design, just all for style. My predictions here for Knuckles is that he'll be not only just a pirate, but a treasure hunter. That was a thing that was established in the previous Sonic games, like Sonic Adventure 2 and Sonic Rider Zero Gravity. And as for his characterization, I will save that for the end, but won't get into it that much. Oh, I almost forgot about Angel Island. Okay. In the Stormhawks universe, Atmos looks bizarrely similar to the Sonic's universe, Angel Island. I believe Angel Island will be worked into the show's plot in later episodes, and it could be in the similar vein as Atmos. That's all. And now, for the final character. The man, the myth, the legend, Shadow, who I gave a somewhat interesting concept and prediction on how he will be implemented in the show. With 2 of my concept art, I have both of my own interpretations. The first here is based on the concept art creation of Shadow by artist Yuji Yukawa. Tyrios. He will be an alternate dimension version of Shadow who looks a lot more like Sonic. My story/prediction for this version of Shadow in this show that you can see here of my concept concept art is that he's part of the Black Arms and is their commander. This will be his first possible debut. Then my second and final concept art of Shadow is where he finally transforms himself to look like his game counterpart throughout the series. The only difference I made with this design are his shoes, or rocket skates, looking like his concept art version. Then made his red stripes different just for, again, style, and gave him his own equivalent of his inhibitor rings. These can work just about the same as Shadow's powers, only this time with an emerald shard inside this thing called his quantum inhibitor, which again can make Shadow's abilities more powerful whenever he uses them, but every time he does, it has a limit and times out for a short while. Some of you now might be wondering why add something like this for a character like Shadow, and I'll be getting into that later. I would like Shadow's character in this show to be more of a mixture of his characterization from Sonic Adventure 2, Heroes, and yes, despite how infamous the game was, even 06 to some extent, with a bit of Eric Myers from Power Rangers Time Force. I know, a little bit of a weird combo, but I'll explain. In Power Rangers Time Force, Eric was a headstrong, determined person who started to be shown as a self-serving, arrogant jerk who thought being extremely prideful and standoffish showed strength. But when he became the Quantum Ranger, he eventually later learned about being compassionate to others and also being humble with yourself. These are some of the characterization I wouldn't mind seeing in Shadow in this show. Kind of like what Sonic Boom tried to do for Shadow, but failed at, with making him more, "You're weak. You know what makes you weak? Your loyalty to your pathetic friends. Ooh, I'm bad to the bone." Or, "This aggression shall not stand. Sonic and his friends shall pay, 'cause I'm insecure and have a small dick." Hackney kind of writing. And they could do a sort of retelling of Sonic Adventure 2's story and combine some of those aspects of Shadow's character arc. And later on, we could also see some of the other alternate versions of Sonic 2, like Boom Sonic, Classic, Satam, whichever other version of just Classic Sonic there is, Sonic Man, yes, this was a real character, and maybe Adventure or Movie Sonic, accompanying with their original voice cast. That would be extremely cool. And those are just the beginning of some of my concepts. There are other characters and concepts that I think would make Sonic Prime even more of a cool show. Like making some characters similar to the Ben 10 franchise, if anybody are familiar with Ben 10's lore. Like Black Doom being like Vilgax, Uncle Chuck being like Max Tennyson, Knuckles' characterization being like Kevin 11, and if possible to add a specific character, which will be extremely unlikely after the fiasco that I just talked about. I would really love to see Scourge the Hedgehog, who was the anti-version of Sonic from the Archie comics, to be just like Albedo from the Ben 10 Alien Force franchise, who was the anti-version of the main character, Ben. On topic of the Ben 10 franchise, I can now answer the question some might have had about the quantum inhibitor I've added to Shadow. And that's because I've took some inspirations from Ben 10's Omnitrix, and also because Sonic Prime is being entirely written by Men of Action! And they are mostly well known for the creation of it. So maybe see something similar, not entirely the same as that, would be kind of awesome. And maybe eventually the series, or season, depending on how well the show is received, could end with every alternate version of Sonic fighting off against every alternate version of Robotnik/Eggman to this ultimate combination of a big finale. This is where we see Sonic at his peak and see his self-discovery, and this will be Sonic's big redemption. So that's about every bit of my thoughts and predictions on Sonic Prime. And overall, I'm kind of looking forward to the show. Yeah, I can somewhat agree with the people being skeptical about his animation looking a little cheap and plastic-like. I can also agree with some of the comments I've been getting that the main premise of the show involving the multiverse seemed like Sega just following a popular trend and not thinking of standing out themselves. And yeah, I know that some of my predictions are a little far-fetched and are most unlikely to happen, like seeing Scourge, Uncle Chuck, maybe the Freedom Fighters, or most of the RG and IDW Sonic comic characters. But man, isn't the thought in my predictions such an awesome concept to just think about? Like this ultimate climax of everything Sonic from every piece of media. But that's the thing. It's just an idea in concept. Most of you might be wondering why I would waste my time coming up with a story concept that will never happen for a cartoon blue hedgehog. Well, in all honesty, people, the reason for all of this is because Sonic's storytelling narrative nowadays being handled by Sega is just one big, inconsistent, unfocused mess of a joke. With games like Sonic Lost World and Sonic Forces being living proof of that. I've sort of excluded Sonic Colors and Generations from this, cause, well, with Colors, if it was just paced right and written by some sort of a supervisor that is familiar with the series' lore and characters, it could have been at least a decent lighthearted narrative, and Generations not having much of a story to work with. But as I've stated from my previous video on Sonic Prime, Sonic Lost World and Sonic Forces were both inconsistent with their tone, characters, and identity. And that's the biggest thing I think about quite a lot when it comes to Sonic. Sega now in recent years seem to treat the main identity of Sonic as kind of a joke, as well with having no conviction for their narrative too. And that's why I made my own conception on Sonic Prime. Giving it vision, giving it conviction, giving it care. And that's what I think Sega lacks nowadays with Sonic. And I do still believe, hope, that Sonic Prime could fulfill. With the help of the writing from Man of Action, who some of the writers seemed like they are familiar with the series' lore, I also now notice there have been some discourse within the Sonic fanbase about the rating of the show being TVY7. And I can somewhat understand why some were at odds with that. To which I say, yeah, kind of makes sense for a franchise like Sonic. I mean, guys, at the end of the day, this is a series about a blue anthropomorphic hedgehog that runs at the speed of sound, breaking the sound barrier, and is friends with other multicolor anthropomorphic characters with special powers and abilities, who most of their lives revolve around stopping an evil mad scientist with an egg-shaped body and has an IQ of 300. I'm not expecting the show to be this super serious, grim-dark, gothic story. But I can also understand and somewhat agree with the other side of the argument of not wanting the show to be too basic and kiddie like Sonic Lost World, or trying to disguise itself as a serious story with stakes but isn't like Sonic Forces, that just don't work. But I do still have some faith it can be a compelling narrative with interesting characters and an incredible world to build off from. So, to end off this video, I would like to take an excerpt from the RG Supersonic Special number 8 that I personally think is pretty fitting for the topic of this video.
Wow! If I hadn't gone to those zones...
Lots of bad stuff would have come down. I know. You can thank me later.
But why always me? Why not send somebody else?
Guys, you're Sonic Prime, the one true Sonic of all the dimensions. It's your destiny to become the most pivotal hero of all time and space.